Well, let's pick the story up with Janny and Nell. Remember, they had stopped at the post where they were going to meet, that cafe where they were going to meet Jaff, uh, and they were on time, and so was Jaff. Actually, Janny and Nell had barely come in and spoken to Audrey and exchanged pleasantries, and it said they were going to have a meeting. And Audrey said, "Oh yeah, Raf, he comes here just about every day or every other day. He's usually here at 11." Well, in comes Raf, and he said, "Let's sit over there in the corner because I think you got questions probably. We want to talk." Well, normally Raf would order a bacon, cheese, and egg croissant for his lunch, and this was no exception. And both Janny and Nell thought, well, that sounds good to me, maybe with some coffee with it, and so they made their order and sat down. Now, Nell didn't say very much. That's usually the way she is. She lets Janny do the talking, and but it started with Raf. Raf said, "Well, do you have any questions, Janny, about what you've seen so far?" And Janny jumped right into it. The water wheel. I want to know about that water wheel. And it looks special, he says to me. And Raf said, "Well, yes, it is very special indeed. It's the biggest in diameter water wheel in the United States. Overshot water wheel. You could make a bigger one if it were undershot, but it's overshot. And not in the world. There's a bigger one." And Janny interrupted. "Yes, I know that. We've been to see that one. It's on the Isle of Man, off the coast of England. We've seen that." And Janny said, "No, yeah." Janny said, "I even know. I looked at that. I studied it. I even know how you managed this town. Managed to make that so high." Since there was a train track and train between the water source up there at the Earth's Drink and the water wheel. And you couldn't build a sluice across there. I know what you did. You used an inverted siphon. I know that because I saw the standpipe on the other side. And that way you were able to keep that height. And Raf said, "Well, that's good. Yes, you're exactly right about that." And Janny said, "Well, how high is that?" And Raf said, 50 feet. We could have probably made it higher, or more of a fall if we'd gone down deeper. But we probably could have gone with 60 feet if we wanted to. It's such a special site." Oh, and Raf said, "It's also not only the highest, it's the most powerful overshot water wheel maybe in the world, because of that strong source of steady source of water. There was once a more powerful one in Troy, New York, but it's been abandoned and scrapped mostly." And Johnny nodded his head. He knew he knew a lot about the history of water wheels because he was interested. Remember, he was like his son, having graduated from MIT. Janny had also studied engineering, structural engineering, and other kinds. And he said, "Well, I've got some questions, though," he said, Janny. He said, "Why did you make it out of wood?" And, Janny said, "Why wouldn't you have used stainless steel or some kind of steel or something more substantial?" And Raf said, "You've got to understand the purpose of that water wheel is not just for looks, and it's not even just for power. Although none of the power is wasted. It's also as an example of what an ordinary person could do. That happens to be such a big one, but all over the cove there are examples of small ones like it." Identical to it really, but much smaller. And the average Joe can't be working with stainless steel. and casting, special castings. So the community built it out of wood, which basically everybody has. And Janny said, "Aha, that explains why you don't have a hub in the middle, which would have to be specially cast. That's I told you about this earlier. That's a clasp arm setup for the spoking." And Raf said, "Yep, that's right. That's exactly right. All you need is you don't even really need a bandsaw. All you need is a skill saw, really, or a table saw, to make a small one. But this is a big one." And Janny was beginning to soak this in, and he said, "And the aluminum? Why did you use aluminum for the buckets?" And then he said, "No, well, no, it wasn't that." Raf said, "Well, the same sort of thing. An average Joe with a little bit of training and nothing more than a bending brake, really, can work in aluminum. It's as cheap as steel. It won't rust. Now, we used a heavier gauge aluminum than these small ones that are all around the cove. We used a heavier gauge for this. But we also made it so that you could take each bucket out if you wanted to. We didn't spot weld, we didn't even rivet it. We put it together, actually, well, I don't know if I should tell you this whole thing, because later on Janny was able to study it in the poly, which I will tell you about. So that way it could be repaired, and it was cheap. I could have answered you, we didn't want to use stainless steel because that would have been really expensive, and a hub, a special hub, that would have been really expensive. No, we have shown that such a wheel can be done very, very cheaply, really. And Jenny said, "Oh, I'm understanding everything you're saying here. And it's not, let me guess why it isn't a Fitz wheel." You see, Janny knew about Fitz water wheels. He'd studied this stuff. I'm guessing it's because a Fitz water wheel would have required welding and a lot of joinery, or not joinery, a lot of rivets, and it would have involved curves. I looked at that close. There's no curves on that wheel. Everything is straight. And I'll bet it's, let me think, not 32, 64 buckets. And Janny said, "I'm impressed. Yep, you understand this really well." And he said, I'm not going to explain this whole thing right now. They talked for quite a while. I'll tell you what Nell did in the meantime in a second video. But as it was getting on closer to 12 o'clock, Raf said, "You don't have this whole thing figured out yet. You don't know what's done with that power." And James said, "No, wait a minute. What about that rope drive on either side? Why in the world did you use rope drive?" And no sooner had he asked a question than he probably realized, well, it's because any average Joe could do that. You could hand braid the rope. And also he mentioned it, and Raf was impressed. Janny really knew his engineering and his water wheels. And he said, and that's like the bull gear. If you want to speed, that wheel must turn at like 1-2 RPM. And if you want to do something like run a generator, you're going to want something much faster. And so that's your bull gear. And down out of sight, there must be a pinion gear pulley, really. And said, Janny said, Raf said, "I don't need to explain this stuff because you seem to see it all. But if you want to see a display about it and a model of it, go to the poly. In the top floor of the poly, the whole top floor of the poly is full of models of all kinds. And there you will find a model and an explanation of that water wheel, a detailed explanation and a functioning model of it all. But one other thing before you go, there's more to say about this conversation than I can easily bring to an end right now. So I'll have to pause here and go on to another video. Bye for now.